Hi, I'm Kurt Smith. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Working Excellence. I'm joined by James Gorman, who is our leads the cybersecurity practice and is acclaimed, awarded, and recognized in the cyber industry, having won Cyber Defense Magazine's top CISO for the last 3 years running. James, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Kurt.
So the objective of us getting together is we wanted to share some of the experiences that we have out in the industry, and we hope that people find it interesting and might be interested in hearing more about how we might be able to help those same sorts of problems inside their company. So when we typically talk to customers, there's three different buckets of help that we typically see. And those buckets are they need help thinking about what their strategy is, what their KPIs should be, what their investment should be, their architecture. So all the planning pieces, the very strategic things. And I think the second bucket that we see is that there's going to be a point in time issue. That is, they've been hacked, they've got compliance, they want to measure where they are on the roadmap that they committed to the board of directors.
Yeah.
So that point in time cybersecurity help. And then thirdly, we see companies that say, we don't want to try to be in the cybersecurity game. We'd rather outsource this function, and let us focus on the things that make us special with our business in the marketplace.
Right.
Let's go one by one and let's talk a little bit about some of the interesting things we've seen in projects that we've done in each of those three buckets. Let's start with strategy. Well, let's talk
Well,
about how you build and how you think about it, and
well,
typically what customers are telling you.
so typically when we're talking to strategy to a company, it's a company that has to make a decision on how they're going to protect their assets, protect their digital assets, and especially when they have new projects coming up or they have new spend that's happening or an acquisition and how we're going to go from point A to point B. Most of the time, what we try to do is we try to say, okay, we're going to create a cybersecurity program and we're going to base it around your needs. So, what are your needs? Are you in a regulated industry? What do you want? How do you have it? And a nice example of this is we were talking to a mid-market manufacturing company of about $200 million a year in revenue, and they had never thought about cybersecurity in the past. It's always been just we need to have antivirus, anti-malware, but we're now moving up market. We're coming online. We're going to be delivering products to Walmart, and they have this 300-page questionnaire, and we really need to give a thought to what we're going to do with strategy. So what we came in and we walked them through, well, what are they doing now? What are their expenses? What are their people? What's their technology? What's their platforms they're running on? What's their security needs? Do they have nation state interest, or do they just need to keep the common criminal out? So those are kind of the things we take into mind with strategy and working with this mid-market manufacturer who's been making things better, faster, and cheaper than they did yesterday for 25 years. But now they have to put some thought around what's the right kind of spend do we have? What's the right kind of inconvenience? Because security is when you add multi-factor authentication, is one more step to logging in. How are the people on the floor going to be affected? How are the people in shipping going to be affected? And walk through all of those aspects to come up with a cybersecurity program that gets them secure. And by being secure, it allows them to be compliant to various standards.
I've seen a lot of differences, I think, between the middle market space and what maybe the Fortune 500 companies in terms of their propensity to spend, ability to attract talent, to do some of these
Yeah.
strategic things. Again, middle market companies are, and we'll talk about this a number of times, but they're placed under the same set of rules, but they don't have the same sorts of budgets that the
Right.
conglomerates and multinational companies have. So let's talk a little bit about what we've seen around in the SMB space and some of the challenges and what they're trying to do to stay up to speed.
So in the SMB space, they are faced with the exact same threats, the exact same regulations, and the exact same expectations of security that a Fortune 500 company is, but they're faced with a fraction of the budget. Where a Fortune 500 company may have a cybersecurity strategy and budget, an office that has 30 people in it, a CISO, and a chief risk officer, and a whole host of support staff, a small to mid-sized company is not going to be able to afford that to, again, defend against the same types of threats that the Fortune 500 are, to comply to the same rules and regulations that a Fortune 500 company are. So What we like to do with our customers is create a security program based around what their needs are, whether it's startup SaaS company or a gas station owner that has multiple service stations throughout multiple states in the United States, or an electronics manufacturer that manufactures stuff in Taiwan and California and Dublin.
How do you balance? I mean, one of the things that I've heard many times is trying to get the balance between usability from the users of the business users of the systems, tight security, right, and
Yeah.
authentication, or all the things that maybe the technology group or the cybersecurity group is looks to make it foolproof or as foolproof as they can. How do you balance those two things when you're doing a strategy for a customer,
So
Jim?
there are two kind of jokes that go along with this cybersecurity officer. So they tell you you can't do anything, so that's how you're going to be secure. But then again, the only perfectly secure computer in this world is one that's turned off in a safe at the bottom of a mine in Butler, Pennsylvania, for example.
Of all places.
Well, uh, Iron Mountain has their facility
Uh,
there. It's behind armed guards, steel gates. That's the only secure computer in the world, but it's very difficult to use that computer. So you want to have the ability to use a computer or a tablet or a scanner or some electronic device to help you do your daily tasks in the business better, faster, and cheaper. Because again, you're trying to be profitable. It's a tight wire act, and it's really up to the CEO or the C-suite and the board to understand the risks that they're accepting by allowing certain things to do. And what we try to do is we try to explain those risks in as simple a terms as possible so that the executives can make a decision. Okay, I will accept decrease in usability. It'll take an extra 15 seconds for everybody to log in once, but it only happens once. And I'll accept the trade-off for using multi-factor authentication. But what I won't accept is every time you change screens on our application, you have to log in with multi-factor authentication. So it's a balancing act. If you're going to accept that risk is minimized by these certain controls, and that will allow you to do that business safely. And again, it's what risk are you fighting against? Are you fighting against a nation state? Are you fighting against an internal user? Are you fighting against a criminal? What's the most likely vector of attack? And each one of those will have a different metric that you have to apply against it. So,
in terms of a percent of spend, I typically, you can see high tech companies, especially startups, will spend 10, 15, 20% of their cost of goods sold will go towards technology, right?
right,
And you'll see your typical more mature companies spend somewhere between 2.5 to 5% on
yeah,
technology.
right.
And if you put cyber into that bucket, what percentage of that percentage would
So,
you say is
so
the kind of the rule of thumb spend?
the best rule of thumb I ever heard was a PE firm that I work with or that we've worked with has a rule of thumb that your cyber spend should be 1.5% of revenue unless you have a problem. Then it can be up to 10% of revenue. And that problem could be you've been recently hacked, you're in the national security space, you're in a highly regulated space like healthcare. But for the PE focused on manufacturing in the 100 to $300 million a year range, they said 1.5% of revenue towards their cybersecurity.
Let's transition a little bit. Let's talk about the second bucket that we identified as we got started, which is the consulting that we do around point in time compliance and being hacked and ransomware. And tell the story of, I think it's a fantastic story around the ransomware project that we recently did. It was being posted. They delayed, and then and you fixed it before they could.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did there. So we kept delaying them, and once we were able to make sure that we had good backups and were able to recover, we were able to just walk away from paying the ransomware. But we had engaged a company that specializes in ransomware negotiation. So you engage them so that they don't burn stuff, and then you understand what they have. And the good news is that they didn't have anything that would have been, completely disastrous if they published it. Who cares if they publish operating system stuff? But the crown jewels of the organization were saved from the ransomware. There's another one that's going on right now that the crown jewels were not saved, and it's a complete disaster. If you look at the public ones like MGM, they were taken down for days because of the same ransomware that got exploded in our customer, but because our customer had good backups, good resilience built in, but we were able to stop it, get it backed out, and wave goodbye to the ransomware
Yeah,
people.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit in this bucket about compliance and governance. We touched upon it, how market companies, big companies, all have to dance to the same compliance and governance regulations, and how sometimes challenging that is. There's a number of different frameworks. There's the NIST framework. There's ISO 27001. There's others. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on picking the right one for you, because I know we have this discussion all the time with clients, and picking the right one that is appropriate for the size and the type of company and where that company wants to go in the future.
Yeah, and that's the main driver on which framework that you have to follow is what is your regulatory environment? So are you a healthcare company? Are you a payments company? Are you a financial company? Are you a federal contractor? The big all federal contractors, all Department of War, Department of Defense contractors are going to have to be CMC level 2.0 certified at some level in their environments. So there's a whole bunch of people that are having a new compliance forced on them. And how do we manage to fit into that compliance framework? What are the requirements? So most people don't have a compliance framework that they have to follow. So there's no set chunk of controls or chunk of compliance that you have to do. So if you're not in financial, you're not in the federal government, you don't have a general framework that you have to meet. So you can pick from any framework that you have to meet. And most frameworks are built off of the NIST standard. So the 853 is what most frameworks are built off of, the NIST 853. And NIST was kind enough to go ahead and create a general framework that's much less detailed than the 853, which they call the NIST cybersecurity framework. And most companies can adopt the NIST cybersecurity framework and create a program built around the structures in the NIST, the detect, recover, govern. There are 5 pieces to it. So it's to build a program that makes sense for a small company or a very large company. And it's very flexible across that so that you can make sure that you have your detection and response correct, you have your recovery correct, and then you have your ongoing best practices to make sure that things stay in place. And if you can check those boxes, you have a secure program and you have a compliant program.
What's the place that your customers, the people we talk to in the market, where is the area that they underinvest in, do you think?
They underinvest in the ability to detect and respond to their environment. So I saw a statistic that Verizon put out. Most companies have 75 different tools that they're using, and this is companies in the $50 million a year and up range, have 75 different tools that they're using in some form or fashion for compliance or security. And most of them aren't monitored. Most of them aren't tracked. Most of them aren't logged. So they're just throwing off alarms or they're throwing off alerts into a void, and nobody goes to look for them until there's a problem. But if you're proactively monitoring, you're proactively logging, then you're addressing problems before they become a problem. Or you address a problem when it just starts at the start, like my ransomware customer did, and he was able to save his whole company from being taken down by ransomware because
Yeah,
he got involved, because he got an alert and he got involved right away, and he isolated and responded to the alert right away.
yeah.
And most companies don't do that.
Let's transition to the third bucket and talk about outsourcing. Cost benefits that customers will see and the time frame in which they'll see it. One of the things we talked about, I mentioned earlier, was the idea is the competing for talent in the
Yeah.
marketplace, right?
Yep.
Everybody can't have the best, and it's expensive and that kind of thing. So there's economies of scale with outsourcing. Let's talk a little bit about how companies should think about that and what our experiences have been with both being successful and unsuccessful.
Yeah. Most companies don't have cybersecurity talent on staff. They simply do not. If they're lucky, they have a team of IT people whose second job is cyber. If they're unlucky, they have a CFO whose second job is cyber. And that's when companies get into trouble because they can't even think about how am I going to create a cool place to work for a bunch of cybersecurity gurus to come in here and keep me safe. It's like, nope, you can't have SEAL Team 6 come in every day because they would just get bored. But you need SEAL Team 6 when the war starts. So most companies that I'm dealing with, I'm recommending that we outsource their cyber, so their cyber operations. They can have a cybersecurity head on staff that has a first or second job as cybersecurity, but you're not going to be able to hire the people to run that 24/7, 7 days a week, because when that guy goes on vacation, he's not available, and you're vulnerable again. And the marketplace for a good cybersecurity engineer right now is about $175,000 a year. And that's plus their lift. You're going to have five of them to run 24/7. So why not just outsource for 170, $200,000 a year and get 24/7 monitoring management and then all the services added on top of that. That's kind of the way the math is working right now. Now, when you get into a big organization or an organization that has some serious assets to protect, like a global bank or a federal contractor dealing with top secret or highly classified information, that's a whole different level. But if you're trying to manage your environment and keep your environment safe from your run of the mill criminals and the internal threats that are always there, that's something you don't need to have in house.
The other thing that the outsourcer can help with is keep on top of the most current technologies
Yeah, the tool
and
sets and
right. So
managing those things.
standardize them and then
Yep,
making sure that it's like do it once and apply it to many, right? That
correct,
kind of, and that's
correct.
what the outsourcing team enables. Let's talk a little bit about some of the technologies that you're
Yeah.
seeing out there and some of the interesting things that are
So,
changing.
so like
If you,
every like everything these days, it's AI, 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 holy AI, right?
mhm.
The most interesting technologies that I think are really exemplified by the two examples that I'll bring up. One is a company called Sevi, and what they've created is a digital twin of a cyber warrior that allows them to have AI agents that are protecting their network, remediating the attack, and then getting people back online. The system detects it, it sends it to a SIM, it creates an alert, a human gets involved, the human says, "Let's fix it," and by that time, it's 30 minutes have gone by before a human has even seen it. With a digital twin or a digital cyber warrior, that's happening in 30 seconds. You're really cutting down the time from detection to response.
You just have to hope nobody corrupts your cyber warrior to go rogue on you, I guess, right? That's
You have to hope that the cyber warrior is less likely to be corrupted than your frontline access manager.
yeah. And also, I wanted to add in a piece about the hyperscalers and where they are relative
Yeah.
to each other in the marketplace.
There's a lot of religious warfare going on among the hyperscalers, where you have advocates of each hyperscaler, but each hyperscaler has a good niche. So whether if you're already a Microsoft shop, go with Microsoft. If you're already an AWS shop, go with AWS. That kind of thing. The biggest problem that I see in people going to hyperscalers is they think that because they're in AWS, let's say, they're going to be secure, and that's simply not true. And one of the tool sets that I love that we've seen is using AI to go through your hyperscaler environment and telling you where you can be more secure, where you need to tighten up some rules, where you're doing okay, how much money you're spending, is there an opportunity to save, and then give you a playbook to recoup those costs and make those improvements.
Interesting. Yeah, I see also quite often a lot of multi-vendor environments, right?
Right.
A lot of customers tell me they don't like the idea that they have one hyperscaler and that they have too much control over the relationship, meaning the hyperscaler does. So they like to split their business up. And the hyperscalers, for depends on the type of load it is, will do different things better.
If you're running Oracle database, it's best to run it in Oracle than to try to run it somewhere else. I don't want to make any more comparisons because
There's a lot of
there's
what
a
ifs out there.
there's a lot of room for
But the
interpretation. But the reality is that if you're building a massive system online, you want to have diversity and you want to be have. I mean, the AWS outage last month was a proof that if you even a hyperscaler can go down, putting all your eggs in one basket is bad. So many people are doing the growth. Well, I'll start on one hyperscaler and then I'll migrate, or I'll have new services put on a secondary hyperscaler, because again, with doubling your cost or adding to your cost by going to a second hyperscaler, it is a decision that people have to weigh. That's another part of the risk governance compliance is, how do I make the decision? Where does it make sense for me to spread that risk across two hyperscalers and increase my cost by 20% or 30%?
And then hyperscaler, let's make it up here. AWS's tool isn't
Correct.
necessarily the right tool to sit over an Azure, AWS, and Google
Correct.
environment, let's say.
Correct.
So is it better to pick a third party tool that sits over the top of those that has, if you will, independence over the top? Those are always those decisions I think that customers.
Yeah, and they're very difficult because you have a whole team that built the application, and I'll pick on AWS. So you have a whole team, 30 people that built the application running on AWS. They know AWS, they're comfortable with AWS, and now we say, well, you have to move that over to Azure just to have some things. And so since they're on AWS, everything's written, infrastructure as code. It's all written in Terraform. Theoretically, it's going to be easy to pick that Terraform up and move it over to Microsoft. Yeah, that's not going to happen. In
Yeah,
reality, it's not that simple. It's like taking a carburetor out of a Ford and putting it into a Chevy. You can do it, but it's going to be a lot of customization.
yeah, yeah. Is there any last comment that you want to make before we adjourn?
The main comment or the main takeaway about cyber is that it sounds, very confusing, and there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt spread by a lot of different cyber security vendors that are out there because they want you to buy their product and only their product will solve the solution. But the reality is that if you build a program and you have the basic blocking and tackling in place to take care of your environment day by day, week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter, just like you do your financials, there's no reason to have fear, uncertainty, and doubt around cybersecurity.
Yeah. We're consultants. We don't have a product. We don't rep anybody's products. We pick the right tool that fixes the problem for our customers.
Yep.
And so depending upon your risk profile, your budgets, your speed, your current investments, your people, the technology
Yep.
you're already on, the people, what they've been trained in, will help you pick the right solution for you and the right
Yeah.
roadmap forward. And it's not we're not a product company, although we have lots of experience with AI and all these tool sets. We pick the right tool set that solves the right problem for you.